This is a thief who got stuck on a third-floor windowsill and can't get out. And this is a young carjacker hiding in a teddy bear until his hiding spot started to breathe, giving him away to the police. And what about the thief who was in such a hurry to escape that he couldn't? Or a criminal who announced his plan on social media in advance, while the police were already waiting for him at the scene. My name is Knox, and I will show you the most ridiculous, strange, and funny failures of criminals who ended up in their own traps and unwittingly became internet stars. You know, sometimes real life throws up stories that can rival any comedies. Imagine a thief in Bangladesh deciding to break into a house through a third-floor window, thinking that no one would notice. The plan was simple and brilliant, but here's the catch: the window opening turned out to be too narrow. At some point, this thief realized that he wasn't just stuck, but had hit a dead end. He was hanging on the windowsill, trying to pull himself out. But he didn't know what would happen next. Passers-by couldn't help but laugh and started filming him, spreading it all over the internet. Think about it. What's worse, getting caught by the police or becoming a laughingstock for everyone around? Becoming an internet star isn't that hard if you become a victim of your own stupidity. The rescuers who arrived on the scene had a tough time freeing him. And the thief apparently didn't even realize that the whole world would judge his biggest mistake. The irony is that he wanted to be invisible to the police, but ended up famous on YouTube. What is this? Legal revenge from the universe, or just a cruel joke? But if one little thief was stopped by a windowsill, another decided to hide in a much less conventional spot. Think about how incredible the plan must be to hide from the police in a giant stuffed bear. An 18-year-old thief, while stealing a car, decides that hiding like this is his brilliant way to escape pursuit. Really? If you think about it, what could be safer than a thick woolen toy? But, like with the windowsill, his hope for invisibility quickly crumbles. The police immediately noticed that the bear was moving and breathing unusually. Pulling the thief out of the toy was reminiscent of scenes from a comedy movie. The spectacle was so ridiculous that even the police couldn't help but laugh. How many times do we hear about genius criminals? But, as this situation showed, genius often goes to zero when it relies on ideas that are the easiest to expose. Would you ever think that the best way to escape the law is to become part of the toy world? I think this thief will soon regret his choice. But if hiding behind a bear is already absurd, what can be said about someone who decided to announce their criminal intentions on social media? Next story. This is a perfect example of how your own vanity can play a cruel joke on you. Andrew Hennell became known not only as a criminal but also as a true social media enthusiast. Why? Because 15 minutes before committing the robbery, he posted on Facebook, heading out to do the job. One could immediately start wondering what's wrong with this person. He's so confident in his plan that he even decided to share it with the world in advance. Of course, this post got a lot of likes and comments, but here's the most interesting part. The police were already waiting for him at the crime scene. That's it. He became the main story of his own failure. In fact, overconfidence and the desire for attention on social media often lead to fatal mistakes. And who would have thought that these 15 minutes of fame would be his end? So, if you're thinking about committing a crime, remember that you can be exposed not only by witnesses but also by your own ambitions. But some criminals, even when being careful, still fall into traps. Criminals often rely on speed, but what if the technology fails? One thief thought that stealing a smartphone was an easy task. However, he overlooked one detail: the automatic door. When he tried to escape, the door didn't open, and he found himself trapped in a glass snare. The door wouldn't open, and the thief was left in complete isolation. His attempts to get out turned into a real show for the passers-by, who happily filmed the whole thing. It seems like this could be tracked in some crime series, but the problem is, it was happening in real life. Maybe he was counting on luck to be on his side, but in the end, he had to face the fact that sometimes technology becomes a trap. Especially if you don't realize quickly enough that they are your enemies. So, if you ever decide to break the law, remember that there might be not just the police around you, but also doors that might decide otherwise. And what if the thief can't escape but ends up becoming a true urban legend? This thief became a true legend of the local store, but not for the reason one might think. He was so fearless and reckless that he literally robbed the same store every day, filling his bag with bottles of drinks and chips. He didn't hide his face and didn't care at all about his reputation. He was nicknamed Gato Raidman, and maybe he thought people would fear him like a superhero, but at some point, luck ran out on him. The store employees blocked the exit, and instead of continuing his escape, he became a voluntary returner of the stolen goods. Not all criminals give up so easily, and sometimes you have to resort to unusual methods to escape a trap. For example, what could be more surreal than trying to hide in a ditch? But that's exactly what happened to the criminals in Colombia. Forgotten crimes are often the most absurd, and this case from Colombia is no exception. Two thieves decided to steal a manhole cover, but the plan didn't go as scripted. Grabbing the heavy object, they overlooked one important detail. The cover itself was much more difficult to handle than they thought. As a result, one of them fell into the ditch, getting stuck in the mud, while his partner in crime was unable to help. This scene, captured on camera and going viral, became a real lesson for all thieves. Sometimes even the simplest object can be what leads to your downfall. When criminals fall into their own trap, their attempts to escape often turn into a real circus. But what about cases when traps become too complicated and even deadly? In Chile, there was once such a case that will make you think. This case in Chile was undoubtedly one of the most striking examples of how stubbornness and determination can become an unexpected weapon in the fight against criminals. A truck driver found himself held captive by two carjackers who blocked him on a narrow bridge. But instead of giving in, he used his truck as a shield, breaking through and driving the carjackers away. It was a dangerous yet highly successful confrontation, where the aggressiveness of the carjackers backfired on them. This case teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes willpower and determination can get you out of the most dangerous situation. The truck driver was resolute, but what if the criminal himself tries to be a hero, but his own actions lead to a comedic failure? In the next story, we'll see how an ordinary pizza delivery guy turned into a real crime fighter. A pizza delivery guy in Pennsylvania became an unexpected hero when he spotted a carjacker trying to flee the scene of the crime. Instead of just delivering the pizza, he quickly assessed the situation and intervened. He caught the criminal without hesitation. This case became a true example of how a person can use their skills and determination in the most unexpected situations. Who would have thought that a pizza delivery guy would be braver and more determined than many professionals? But sometimes criminals are so confident in their success that they don't expect to find themselves in the most ridiculous trap. A 17-year-old thief decided to commit a major crime, stealing expensive bags from the Louis Vuitton store. But as soon as he ran to the exit, he hit his head on the glass door and lost consciousness. Imagine how absurd that looked. The unlucky thief not only didn't steal anything, but also became a victim of his own carelessness. This event became a vivid example of how even the most brilliant plans can fall apart due to a lack of basic caution. And how often do you forget to think about the consequences of your actions? Let's move on to the next story, which is not at all related to intelligence, but rather to how laziness and disrespect can lead to disaster. In Brazil, a group of pranksters decided to teach a lesson to bike thieves. In Brazil, a group of pranksters decided to set a trap for thieves who love to steal bicycles. But instead of just placing a regular bike by the tree, they made it part of a clever trap. The bike was tied to an almost invisible rope. And as soon as the thief tried to steal it and ride away, the rope abruptly stopped the vehicle. As a result, the bike thief crashed to the ground with a thud, landing in an epic situation that was all caught on video. But what's most interesting about this case, the pranksters not only managed to teach the thief a lesson, but they also made the public think about how often we can get caught in our own traps if we're not careful about the details. Now let's talk about random criminals who accidentally do everything the wrong way. What about those who plan a crime in advance, but everything goes differently than they expected? This case, which happened in America, can be considered one of the most unexpected fails. Kevin Dew went to the police to pay money for a friend, but on the way, he dropped a bag of meth. Instead of hiding, he tried to cover up his mistake, but he was discovered and arrested. How often do we decide to help others, only to end up in trouble ourselves? This case is yet another example of how one small mistake can lead to catastrophic consequences. But of course, no one expected such a mishap to happen in real life. Now let's move on to a situation where a criminal found himself in the most awkward position related to his own plan, which turned into a complete fiasco. When two armed robbers burst into a store in Arizona, they didn't expect to encounter James Kyler, a former Marine. In his hands, he held not a weapon, but a regular grocery bag. However, thanks to his combat training, James used that bag as a weapon, taking down one of the robbers. This was not just an act of heroism, it was a lesson for those who think that without a weapon, you can't win. In this story, what's important is how courage and experience can turn an ordinary situation into a true feat. James became a hero, while the robbers became losers. Now imagine how one careless mistake can be the last for a criminal. This case became a real nightmare for many who use dating sites. Khalil Wheeler Weaver, known as the text killer, was a true master of manipulation and deception. He killed several women in a short period of time, just 3 months, but surprisingly, this killer was not caught by the police or his mistakes, but by the family of one of his victims. Imagine that your loved one goes missing, and you start your own investigation. That's exactly what the family of one of Weaver's victims did. They created a fake profile on a dating site, pretending to be a woman, and, most frighteningly, they caught his attention. At one point, Weaver himself became the bait. He started chatting, unaware that his actions were now being closely monitored. Through this fake profile, they managed to lure him into a date. As soon as Weaver agreed to meet, he fell into a trap, and the police acted quickly. I wonder, if the family hadn't taken this step, how much longer would this killer have continued his activities? Sometimes fate is on the side of those who aren't afraid to fight for the truth, even if they risk their safety. These stories teach us that even the cleverest plans can end in complete failure if all the details aren't considered. If you enjoy videos like this and want to see more, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you can write scripts, edit videos, or do voiceovers, you have a chance to become part of our team. Message our Telegram bot, link in the description. See you next time.